Oftentimes when people ask me what my favorite game or franchise is, I can never point to a single one. When I wind up throwing out an answer, it's usually a good 5 to 10 different games, and Metal Gear Solid is always included in that answer. I actually didn't touch the franchise until the HD collection came out 13 years after the first game's initial release in 1998. After playing through the HD edition of Snake Eater, I knew that I had to go find a copy for PS1 on eBay and play through that too, and I was not disappointed in the slightest. I fell in love with the series despite it being well over a decade old. Since the HD collection, we've actually gotten 2.5 more entries. 2.5 more entries. But that's an entirely different video. My point is that I've been wanting to give the first game of the series a hard look for a long time now, and with the help of the wizards over at GOG, I was able to slide back into one of my favorite franchises. These guys have souped up the first and second Metal Gear Solid games over on their site while fully optimizing them to run on modern-day computers, and are releasing them today for purchase. They even gave me a special discount code for you guys to take advantage of over the next couple of days if you're interested in buying the first game for yourself. But most importantly for me, this means that I finally get to answer the question: was Metal Gear Solid as good as I remember? Alright, so Metal Gear has always been very convoluted. It's one of those franchises where every game reveals just a little more about the series' background. Right away, you're treated to an opening cinematic in which the main character is introduced. You know him even if you haven't played the game. Probably. Anyways, our guy Solid Snake is the dude that we're going to be playing as throughout the game. He's introduced as a one-man infiltrator, the guy that they send in to get shit done. Guiding him through this process is Colonel Roy Campbell, who describes himself as the former leader of the Foxhound unit. While you don't know much about what Foxhound was or is at this moment, you do know that Campbell and Snake used to be an integral part of it, and now the organization has gone full terrorist mode as they've captured a couple of high-profile hostages and have taken over Shadow Moses Island. Their single demand is puzzling at the moment, as they're insisting that the US government hand over the remains of someone known as Big Boss. And the icing on the cake here is that they're threatening that they're going to launch a nuke if their demands aren't met. I'm unsure what they're going to be targeting with the nuke, but they're gonna launch it, or so they say. Snake's mission is to sneak onto the island, procure any weapons and equipment necessary to get the job done, rescue the hostages, and neutralize any threat of nuclear weaponry from launching. Opposing Solid Snake are high-ranking members of Foxhound, all of which are listed and described briefly by the Colonel. Leading the pack of terrorists is a man who shares the same name as our protagonist, Liquid Snake. Brother! This is all information that's just piled onto you in the first 3 minutes of the game. Actually, by this stage, you haven't even hit the main menu. It's a lot to soak in if you've never been exposed to the series. And it has a lot of... Okay, so I might lose a few of you on this hot take, but Metal Gear Solid is basically video game anime.
What are you two doing?
No, not like that. But the whole thing is set up like the game is going to be an extraordinarily serious, semi-realistic take on Black Ops infiltration. There are real-world countries mentioned and referred to, along with a lot of weaponry and vehicles. But then the game tosses in the villains, and everything starts to take the slightest anime turn. It's not immediate, and it isn't overwhelming, but it's just a light dusting of anime cheddar to ease the player into the idea that the game might be a little more fantastical than it seems to be at first glance. I'd say that the biggest ingredients in this appetizer are the description of Psycho Mantis as a powerful psychic-wielding soldier, and the man leading the charge who shares your name, Liquid Snake. So after you get the game rolling, you're dropped into the thick of it as you swim your way up to this room manned by 2 guards. When you get to a certain point, the game spends an entire cutscene explaining to you how the codec system works, and how the small device in your ear might be loud and beepy to you, but it's silent to everyone else. That's pretty cool.
When you want to use the codec, push the select button.
Then it doesn't tell you how to do anything else. Like the game explains to you how to answer phone calls and then tells you to go figure everything else out. What a weird thing to give you this thorough explanation of how answering a codec works, and then completely whiffing on telling you to mash the square button to give your enemies the old throat squeeze maneuver. This complete moment of amnesia does let me witness my probably first of many deaths in this game though, which is one of the most iconic parts of Metal Gear Solid.
Snake! What happened? Snake! Snake!
In fact, I would say that almost every single part of the first 2 minutes of gameplay I just experienced is just this wave of nostalgia. From the first codec call, to the sneaking system, to the alert sound effect and the ensuing music, all the way to the game over screen. It's hard to objectively look at all of this stuff and go, were all of these little things perfect? Because it's hard to imagine the game lacking even one of them, and I love every little piece of history that they all carved out as a unit. Anyways, let's dive into the mechanics a bit more before continuing onward with the story. So like I mentioned, the game's all about stealth. Not to say that you couldn't run and gun for a lot of it, but you're going to have a very shitty experience if you do so while alerting guards constantly. You have your big stealth button, which makes you go prone and army crawl to avoid detection and slink underneath cover. You have your radar, which is your best friend for figuring out where enemies are and what they're looking at. Unless you're playing on hard difficulty or above, then your best friend leaves you to fend for yourself. Then you've got your love button, which allows you to gently caress enemies from behind until you place them down for a nice nap. This button also allows you to give the stepdad variant of tough love if you feel the need to WWE super slam your foe into submission for some reason. Plus there's a melee attack button which can be used to knock on a wall to call your friends over to you. But one of the things that make the least sense is the fact that you can only use one equipment item at a time. Meaning that if you find yourself in a poison-filled room, you'll have to swap between a gas mask and a keycard to open the doors within it. When sneaking around and dropping enemies, your biggest foe is going to be yourself. Since the game is pretty archaic when it comes to a lot of its combat systems, the whole choke out an enemy or pile drive them into the ground like your little brother are both assigned to the same button. This means that in order to wrap your tremendous bicep around the enemy's windpipe, you gotta come to a full stop before slamming that square button like your favorite YouTuber just told you to subscribe. If you stop just a little too late, your guy is gonna notice you cornering him like Miyamoto was just told that Nintendo lacks innovation. And while you still might flip him upside down for his lunch money, the real school bully's gonna come firing at you with his SMG momentarily, as all of the guards in the area are instantly alerted. Alright, back to the story stuff. So you get plopped into this initial area where Liquid Snake is telling the guards here to stay on alert because I'll be coming at any moment. This of course means that they're going to patrol the boxes and make sure that I don't instant transmission into existence, and not actually patrol the water where I come from. So I head through, grab the elevator, and strip down until the title of the game appears. After we make it to the top, it's more exposition time as the game starts expanding on all of the futuristic science that explains away any common logistics questions, with explanations such as how am I able to be out here in these sub-zero temperatures with my face exposed?
An anti-freezing peptide, Snake.
How are the terrorists distracted enough to stop watching the only elevator up from this main docking area?
Looks like our little diversion got their attention.
How did Snake smuggle in his cigarettes?
In my stomach.
And most importantly, how every woman so far finds Snake to be hot as fuck.
I can't believe I'm being hit on by the famous Solid Snake. Well, if you make it back in one piece, maybe I'll let you do a strip search on me.
I'll hold you to that, Doctor.
Yeah, this game is like the epitome of 90s action hero cool guy machismo stuffed into one package. I could definitely see how someone would find it cheesy. I myself find it hilarious. Throughout this whole process, it's explained that your radar goes out when you're spotted, as the enemies are able to jam it somehow just by seeing you. The game also walks you through the radar system in general, and tells you how to save your game by calling Mei Ling. After this entire starting area is more or less a light tutorial in which the Colonel walks you through several ways of getting into the base, and then lets you decide what to do. There are spotlights and cameras which cause the base to go on alert if you trip them, and several different methods to slip inside, mostly revolving around a couple of air ducts. After that's all pointed out, you're on your own in deciding how you want to proceed, which is probably the best part about this game. It's a lot like a later release in the stealth genre, Hitman, in which you're plopped into an area and told to do something. How you do it, where you go, what you find, and which method you use is all up to the player, and the playstyle itself offers oodles of replayability in its own right. After slipping into the air ducts, you get a call from someone who Snake refers to as Master. McDonald Miller goes on to claim that he's retired from being a drill instructor to live out in Alaska. Miller actually shows up a lot in the Metal Gear Solid prequels which released after this one, as well as one of the original Metal Gear games back on the MSX2 console in 1990. But for this particular video, I'll be sticking to what's revealed about him in this game. Anyways, he pops in to let you know that he knows all about the native Alaskan flora and fauna, telling you to feel free to quiz him on something if need be. Now I know that someone who played this game probably remembers what's going on with all of this, but I'll shelve that discussion and come back to it later. After this call, I learn of a woman being held hostage in a cell, in addition to another intruder besides me breaking in and killing guards, which, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion from listening to the conversation, seeing as 3 guards being knocked out so far is about the same amount of damage that I've done. Snake is the one that shows surprise and concludes that it must be someone else. These vents take ages to crawl around in. I know it's supposed to be semi-accurate to how slow this process would be, but it's not particularly fun, and I feel like the added cutscenes are supposed to be padding the long segments of crawling. Though then again, Metal Gear Solid has never shied away from long stretches of monotonous movement. What a thrill. Anyways, after a little more sneaking around, I make it over to my first hostage, which is actually surprisingly quick. I remember thinking that this game was going to be a bunch of little mini rescue missions when I first got to this guy. Speaking to the hostage reveals that this island was being used as a research base to create a new type of weapon which he insists will change the world by being able to launch a nuke from anywhere. The name of this weapon is Metal Gear, the series' namesake, and Snake reveals that he's had a few run-ins with the weapon before, or at least some iteration of it. This is again a callback to the old 2D prequels which released forever ago, though this particular prototype is called Metal Gear Rex. My favorite part about this conversation is this little tidbit.
Hey! Shut up in there, will ya?
I love that the professionalism of this outfit is shown to be completely lost on the grunts. But more than that, I love that the chief here just waggles his finger at the terrorist to scoot him away. Anyways, Big Chief here basically tells me that his usefulness to the terrorists has all but expired as far as a source of information goes, seeing as the psychic soldier from before, Psycho Mantis, read his mind and figured out his half of the 2 codes needed to launch Metal Gear Rex. Despite him seeming like he's not useful at this stage, this guy is an absolute fountain of information, telling me where they moved the second high priority hostage, that they cemented over the entrance to where he's being held and haven't painted the wall to blend in with the rest, and the icing on the cake, that he's just been sitting here as a hostage and yet they never frisked him for his ID, which can access any level 1 security door on the base. Then he dies.
Dead.
So immediately we get into another codec call to discuss what happened. The conclusion drawn here is that no one fucking knows, but that the colonel who's been feeding me all of the information doesn't have access to all of the mission file because the Secretary of Defense is the one who's running the operation. Great. A big thing to note is the frequency of these codec exchanges. This series has always been riddled with very long stretches of cutscenes. It's practically a staple. If you're going into this game thinking that it's going to be some high-octane flying by the seat of your pants gameplay from the get-go, you're going to be sorely disappointed. To put it more simply, you're going to be hearing this sound a lot. When you pile onto it the sheer amount of time that these cutscenes take up, and playing Metal Gear oftentimes feels like you're watching an interactive movie instead of playing a video game. In the next scene, it becomes apparent that the girl who's been listening in on your conversation this whole time has somehow convinced the guard to remove all of his clothing and weapons, give them to her so she can use them, and then went and knocked himself out. And then she confronts Snake, to which he cool guys her into submission by calling her a rookie repeatedly. The woman does note that I look exactly like Liquid Snake, which is pretty telling. And then a few swarms of guards come flying into the room to eat some delicious lead. Yeah. Could you imagine if the whole game was like this? Thank God it's not, because this is some really shitty combat. So after this, the lady fucks off, and Snake has only identified one thing about her besides the fact that she's a rookie. Tasteful. Thanks, 1998. To make up for her ass being stared at, she just full autos down this hallway at Snake for like 10 seconds. This is like watching me play CSGO. So this cutscene is the scene that keeps on giving, as it now cuts over to Liquid and the gang to see what they're up to, which is accidentally killing the hostage that I just talked to.
These guys are pros.
This means that Donald Anderson had to be some kind of decoy.
Decoy octopus, master of disguise.
That pretty much explains how the guy was able to shoo away the guard from earlier, and how he had all of this information from before, including where the next hostage is. Finally, this cutscene wraps up by having Snake see Psycho Mantis floating around like a spooky ghost. My controller may be turned off from the lack of input, but at least I can finally play again. So as mentioned before, I'm looking around for a chunk of wall that looks different from the rest. After looting the place and blowing up the wall, I slink on into this area which jams my radar. If you're on hard difficulty, not much changes. If you're on normal like I am, that crutch of having a map is kicked out from underneath you and it makes things quite a bit more intense. Eventually I make it over to the first of the Foxhound crew, Revolver Ocelot. His special talent is this shit. I know it's supposed to be badass, but it's really funny. I'm trying my best to re-experience this game in a way that I'm putting myself in that old school game mindset as a younger person, and trying to see things like this as really cool. But it's just so cheesy now, I can't help but laugh at it. And I don't really think that's a bad thing either. Every time I see someone I recognize from the series, a slew of other cutscenes from other games fly through my head.
Ocelots are proud creatures. Shots.
And that's actually a really good thing. I tend to get fuzzy on a lot of details from games that I haven't played in a while. But if something like this can make that big of an impact on me, there's definitely something special about it. For lack of a better comparison, I'd say it's a lot like Dragon Ball Z. Is DBZ a well-written work of art? Hell no. It's a sinkhole of convenient writing and sudden character progression to make the good guy win. But I remember every bit of it despite not watching it in over a decade. So to me, there has to be something to it that's making it stick out to me like that. Anyways, the boss fight sucks. Basically, you have one of the hostages here tied up with all of these C4 tripwires attached, so you can't walk through the center. So the fight is you running around this square and chasing down or running from Ocelot. You do see when he's out of bullets, so you can rush him then, but a lot of it is just you backing off and getting hit by bullshit ricocheting bullets. And the entire fight has this hostage making the exact same sound over and over. When the fight ends, my man Ocelot gets his hand sliced off by a ninja. If you ever had any doubts about this all being an elaborate scheme to get the average American male to start watching anime, I urge you to reconsider. So Genji here tosses a few edgy lines your way before going ballistic and using his ultimate to dash away. Also, he cut all of the C4 wires, which explode. But don't worry, the hostage is fine. After we prop the hostage against the wall, he admits that he gave his half of the launch codes to the terrorists, and states that the woman from earlier took the keys which can stop the launch from happening. So I have to contact her via codec, which,
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Oh, that's right. It should be on the back of the CD case.
Yeah, totally unsure about whether this was just a fourth wall breaking thing that they wanted to include for laughs or coolness, or if it was some kind of elaborate anti-piracy device in the game. But I have to imagine that this was infinitely annoying for someone with no internet who rented the game from a Blockbuster in 1998. So here's where the game starts to preach about its point. The whole game has this theme about the consequences of nuclear weapons, and the idea that they will eventually lead to our destruction. This is extremely Kojima in how it's presented, with its real-life missile launch cinematics.
Many of the drums are corroded, with nuclear waste seeping out of them.
Unbelievable.
We live in an age when any small country can have a nuclear weapons program.
It's like watching a Magic School Bus episode where Miss Frizzle takes the class to fucking Chernobyl. The point relating directly to the game, though, is that Metal Gear was developed as a nuclear deterrent by the US to ensure that they came out on top of the nuclear arms race. This guy then gives me an optical disc with sensitive data on it, and his keycard to get past the level 2 security doors. Finally, when the old man starts to tell me about the technology that went into the project here by the government, he also seizes up and dies. But not before telling me that the Pentagon is using me for something here, and that the scientist in our group, Naomi, knows who that ninja was. When Snake asks her about this ninja, she claims to have zero idea as to what he's talking about. Say what you will about the somewhat cheesy at times cutscenes, the intrigue here is definitely top-notch. So when I get out of the jamming area, I consult my official Metal Gear Solid PlayStation 1 box art to figure out the correct codec and call it. This turns into an extended conversation where Snake immediately and unapologetically begins hitting on her after she busts a female nut about how he's the legendary Solid Snake. Dude seizes his opportunities, what can I say?
No, they're beautiful, compassionate eyes.
You trying to sweep me off my feet?
Don't worry, you'll land back on them once you meet me. The reality is no match for the legend, I'm afraid.
Oh, I don't believe that.
So yeah, Snake asks about why she thought he was Liquid at first, and she explains that Snake looks just like him, and asks if they're related. Snake insists that he has no family, and asks what exactly Meryl knows about the goings-on around here. She's like, yeah, they invited Foxhound here to test a nuke launch and then Foxhound took the base over. You honestly can't blame the government here. I mean, Foxhound was literally just a special forces type group before this. So from here it's revealed that Meryl does indeed have the detonation override keys from Old Man Baker before. So maybe it really was him.
Well, women have more hiding places than men.
In a world where terrorists don't strip search anyone. Alright, blah blah blah, war is bad, killing people's bad, blah blah. I always wanted to be a soldier since I was a girl. Both parties laugh. Snake tells Meryl that she sways her hips too much when she runs. End scene. Let's go rescue the person who was forced to create this iteration of Metal Gear, Hal Emmerich. This leads us to another mechanic, the infrared sensors and minefields. They're both pretty straightforward in that you have to pop on your thermal vision and time your movements and use a mine detector to locate the claymores buried in the snow.
Just call me Deep Throat.
This guy pops in to say, hey, watch out for mines and tanks, bye. I don't really get a choice to watch out for the tank as the second member of Foxhound comes barreling in to take me on. So I lob grenades at Vulcan Raven in this kind of weird fight. It doesn't feel particularly epic by today's standards, but I imagine that it was pretty interesting back in the day. I don't kill the guy, but I do get a keycard and carry on before a cutscene shows that Liquid seems to have been intentionally testing Snake and toying with him.
In battle, he is as if possessed by a demon.
I hadn't mentioned this before, but your max health does increase after every boss battle, which is pretty nice. What isn't so nice is the next hurdle of video game logic, as I'm told that I absolutely cannot use my weapon in the next area, as it will set off the nuclear warheads that are just lying around here in piles. Okay, sure, yeah, we can pretend like the bullet wouldn't just ricochet off a warhead, but why do all of the enemies here still have guns then?
Watch out, that place is filled with gas. Also, the floor is electrified.
Oh, is that all? Well, I gotta play a minigame where I use a remote-guided missile to turn off the electrified floor before I can continue on, which can be super annoying if I whiff my shot. After I make it through though, I get to take on the Cyborg Ninja from before, who's standing menacingly over Hal.
It's like one of my Japanese animes.
Yep. I gotta say, I think every boss fight in this game might just be outright weird. When you go to shoot the ninja, he deflects the bullets. When you try to punch him, he puts away his sword and you both fight hand to hand.
Hurt me more!
Yeah, this is happening too. The whole fight is lengthy and consists of punching, backing off, and then punching some more. Throughout the fight, it becomes readily apparent that you definitely know this person. Turns out that he's another recurring character from the older games, Gray Fox. Once Snake's comrade, Fox turned on him in one of the previous games where they fought presumably to the death. Snake won the fight, and Fox supposedly died. He was recovered and revived while lots of experiments were conducted on his drugged body, causing him to go fucking mental. Because of these experiments, so-called genome soldiers were perfected to be biologically superior to regular ones. Well, Gray Fox goes flipping away, which leaves us with the contender for the biggest dweeb in video games.
Alone? Are you an otaku too?
As you may be able to tell by now, I love the voice acting in this game. It has a tremendous cast for a PlayStation 1 game, and the over-the-top and cheesy moments are just that much better because of it. Well, old Hal here seems to have no idea that Metal Gear is being used as a weapon to launch nukes. He was told that the project was being used to simply deter and swat down nukes if they were launched, strictly in a defensive manner. Snake fills him in about the true purpose of the machine, and Hal realizes that one of his partners in this whole ordeal were collectively working on a new type of nuclear missile. Filling in the blanks leads us to the realization that Metal Gear was to be used for the live testing. This is particularly devastating for Hal as his grandfather worked on the Manhattan Project, and lived on with shame ever since then. After our long-winded discussion, contacting Meryl yields a conversation in which she gets spotted and starts getting shot at. I have to try to find her when she's alone if she's still alive using Hal's level 4 keycard. Also, Hal wants me to refer to him as Otacon.
Otacon?
It stands for Otaku Convention.
Fucking weeb.
I became a scientist because I wanted to make robots like the ones in the Japanese animes. Really, it's true.
Let's get the hell out of here. Our objective is to now go find Meryl by identifying which guard has a hip wiggle to their walk. This whole point of them repeatedly pointing out that she walks differently because she's the illusory female of all things is a little excessive. I mean, female soldiers in the real world that have been through the same training as men tend to run and walk the exact same way as men. And Meryl here prides herself on going through all of that training. Maybe she just can't help it. At any rate, Snake continues his quest to be cancelled by 2020 standards as he immediately starts hitting on her when she's out of uniform.
So there's something you like about me, huh?
Yeah, you've got a great butt.
When I joined up, they gave me psychotherapy to destroy my interest in men.
Alright, moving on from, whatever the hell this is. Meryl only has one of the card keys to override the launch sequence, which makes sense from a video game perspective. From here we get one of those, the truth is I'd always told myself I wanted to be a soldier, but I never really did, kind of things. It's hard to judge a 22-year-old plotline this way because to me it isn't particularly compelling. But maybe it was a lot more interesting and not as overdone back then.
Isn't that gun a little big for a girl?
God damn it, Snake. So we head out to the next boss, one that anyone who's played this game remembers, Psycho Mantis. He makes his appearance by getting into Meryl's mind and possessing her to try to get Snake to fuck her at gunpoint. Kojima, buddy, there's better ways to go about this. So after knocking Meryl out, Mantis reveals himself before breaking the fourth wall. Well, at least he did in the older versions of the game. It's unfortunate, but the reality of a new version of this game means that the next part of the scene had to be reworked. Which is definitely sad because this is one of those cutscenes that helped in immortalizing Metal Gear Solid as something completely different. In the original PS1 version of the game, Psycho Mantis demonstrates his power of psychokinesis by reading the player's memory card and talking directly to them about several possible Konami games which might have been saved on it. Of course, if your memory card doesn't have any of these games, he tells you that your memory is completely clean. Then he starts looking at Metal Gear Solid specifically, noting if you've run into a certain amount of traps, how often you've saved your game, and how many times you've set off alerts and died throughout your playthrough. After this, the fight actually begins by presumably scaring the shit out of the player via making the game look like it wonked out and displaying this screen. This is probably the best fight in the game just with how unique it is. Mantis cloaks himself, throws paintings and statues at you, surrounds himself with chairs, uses Meryl to try to kill you, and generally tries to fuck with your mind. The big gimmick that people tend to remember is that his mind control powers are rendered useless by switching your controller to the slot in the second port, which is by no means intuitive, but is very cool. An alternative to get him to drop his control is blasting these statues around the room which look like Mantis. At one stage in the fight, he commands Meryl to kill herself, which is also a really dark and unique facet that one wouldn't really expect to see in a game. I like the inclusion of this because it's almost realistic in a way. A villain trying to use whatever they can to distract and prevent the hero from winning is nice to see and gives the fight a lot more weight. Well, when you finally fell the Psychic Master, he begins telling you where you need to go next.
Why are you telling me this?
Oh, gross.
God damn, Meryl. Anyways, Mantis tells you too that he wants to help Snake because reading his mind reveals that Snake has no desire to have kids, because apparently wanting to fuck is something that leads to war by this guy's standards. Kind of a weird leap to make, but alright. Also, while Snake may not want any little snakelets running around, he has definitely not shied away from spreading his proverbial seed. At least not from the way that he hits on pretty much anything that he's remotely identified as female. The background story of Mantis is actually pretty sad, as his dying words explain that the first time that he was able to use his powers, he read his father's mind, and saw that he hated and blamed Mantis for his mother dying during childbirth. Afraid for his life, Mantis burned his village to the ground in a psychotic breakdown. After this, Mantis left on a quest to kill as many people as he could, not caring for world domination or anything like that. His dying request is for Snake to put Mantis's mask back on, so that people's thoughts didn't seep into his mind intrusively.
I want to be left alone in my own world.
As much as I made fun of the guy for being a big old anime lord, I do have to say that I enjoyed his background story a lot, and it made me feel bad for the nutjob as he opened the way out for us before dying.
This is the first time I've ever used my power to help someone. It feels
kind of nice.
After this, Meryl starts quizzing Snake on his past and his personal info, which leads to some of the edgiest answers that someone could come up with.
How old are you?
Old enough to know what death looks like.
I too have studied the blade. So now we head through this outdoors type area, packed with wolves and mines. Meryl is now some kind of super soldier due to Mantis's mine diving from earlier. This means that the wolves love her, and she knows exactly where the mines are placed. This has you following the path that she takes in a mine-dodging minigame.
Leave it to me. Are you impressed?
Well, a little bit.
Only a little?
The game is definitely chugging along at this point, as the next area has us running into our next boss, Sniper Wolf, who shoots Meryl in the leg twice and once in the arm in an attempt to lure Snake out into the open. I just love how Meryl's like, ah shit, they're trying to use me to lure you out. You should probably kill me. Just go ahead and grab my gun right there. Just go ahead and grab my gun right there. What? No, I'll just use my own gun to kill you.
I'm gonna save Meryl no matter what it takes.
Ah shit. Alright then. Yeah, Meryl has this little emotional moment of how she's going to slow him down and how she was so stupid for wanting to be a soldier. There just isn't enough time for me to build up an emotional connection to her. Like, sure, she's not a bad character per se, but I don't necessarily feel like I must save her no matter what. Though it is kind of cute listening to Snake come to the realization that he just wants to save her because it's what he feels. So in order to take on Sniper Wolf, I need a sniper rifle of my own. So I tread back through this area to search for one and then hoof it back when I find it. At this point, the nostalgia high has definitely worn off, and I'm coming to the realization that a lot of the early to mid-game setup is kinda shitty. It's not like I'm not having fun exactly, but the game doesn't have a ton of variety to its environments, and when it does, they tend to be these unfun gimmicks like the gas and electric room. The terrorist AI is pretty stupid, though almost in a comical way. Traps and obstacles tend to be one note, and it makes it very obvious that the game is older. I know that seems like a pretty easy conclusion to come to, but it is worth noting that I do feel the age coming through at this point. Anyways, we head back to Sniper Wolf and have a snipe off. She takes a lot of shots to the head from my Nerf gun before finally falling, and then I get a Kodak call from Mei Ling imploring me to save my game. That's never a good sign.
Don't move!
A lady sniper, huh?
Like the fact that she's a woman hasn't been pointed out to Snake several times at this stage. I think that might just be a pickup line for him at this point. So, you're a woman, huh? And then they just cream their jeans. So yeah, she scratches my face and explains that her plot cleavage in this icy winter environment was what saved her from the bullets ripping through her skull. Then Snake gets blasted in the back of the head before waking up in ye olde torture chamber. This is another iconic part of the game in which Snake is tortured, and you have to mash a button as fast as humanly possible to survive it. Before this though, Liquid explains to Snake that they are indeed brothers, and how they need his genes to perfect the genome soldiers along with Big Boss's genes, which explains why they want Big Boss's corpse. He also explains that you're basically the children of Big Boss. This whole thing is a pretty convoluted plot point of the game which extends again back to the previous games in the franchise. To put it as simply as possible without delving into too many games here, you're both imperfect clones of the legendary soldier Big Boss. You were created as genetic experiments to serve the US government when it turned out that Big Boss was rendered infertile after exposure to radiation. Solid Snake was raised in the US and never left it, whereas Liquid Snake was raised in the UK and escaped after a while before resurfacing as a terrorist against the US. Big Boss defected from America after learning of this experiment being conducted without his consent. I could go on and on about Metal Gear lore, but that's not what this video's about. So let's focus back on what's going on here.
I ride dog sleds. I'm a musher.
Well, Liquid gets called away, which leaves me with Ocelot, who starts grilling me with his questions. Ironically, I don't think Snake actually knows the answers, but Ocelot tries to torture them out of him anyways. He claims that if Snake gives in to the torture, Ocelot will kill Meryl.
When you've had enough, press the select button to submit. When your life reaches 0, the game is over. There are no continues, my friend.
Mash that circle key, boy.
Don't even think about using auto fire, or I'll know.
You know, I'd say all of the fourth wall breaking shit of talking directly to the player is really goofy and doesn't belong, but it honestly almost does belong at this point. Like, I don't know. There's almost a connection between you feeling like the player and feeling like Snake. It's a really weird balance that actually kind of works in its own silly way. It makes me feel more invested almost, and I can't say that I would see this going over as well in a 2020 game.
How did you like it? Had enough.
After the torture, I'm thrown into a cell with the real Donald Anderson's corpse, which has tons of maggots coming out of it, showing that he's been dead for a lot longer than a few hours. So to piece all of this together a little more than before, this means that we were being manipulated by Decoy Octopus in some way or another, which means that these guys probably don't even have the launch codes at all. But Snake doesn't know that. What he's more focused on is the fact that the Colonel has known about Metal Gear's existence and its true purpose this entire time, and hadn't told Snake about it. The whole thing was kept hush-hush by the government for purposes of plausible deniability to such an extent that even the President of the US doesn't know about Metal Gear yet. Furthermore, they don't want him to know about the terrorist attack since he's publicly opposed the idea of genetic experimentation. With these terrorists demanding the remains of Big Boss, if the US simply gave in, they would have to explain that the body is being used to create genome soldiers. It's a fantastic representation of American politics, and I enjoy the nuances of this whole ordeal a lot. Well, the conversation eventually shifts over to the discussion of Donald Anderson's body looking like it's been dead for days. But everyone concludes that the terrorists must have been trying to get to the nanomachines and whatnot in his body, causing it to decompose a lot quicker due to the draining of his blood and whatnot. Not the most convincing argument, but it works for them, so on we go. It's torture time again, boys. I know this is an iconic minigame and all, but there really was no reason for it to be included twice. Oh well. After this round, Ocelot reveals that he wants Russia to reign supreme as the leading superpower of the world. That's all there is to this. Back to your cell for another conversation. In this one, Snake reveals that he killed the man who claimed to be his father, Big Boss.
That's patricide.
Yep.
Cool. I know this is a lot of talking with little gameplay, but this is basically the middle stage of the game, and Kojima has a lot of story to tell. There are a few more character developments thrown out at this point, but I'm gonna zip past them because this video needs to be out in 7 days from typing this script. Eventually, Otacon swings by to try to break me out by giving me a can of tuna and a bottle of ketchup. Oh, and a level 6 security card. But mostly the ketchup. I give this guard some much needed love so that he can join me in my ketchup pile. Then I head back to the electric body massage room, pop on my clothes and equipment back into their rightful places, and head back out. As I'm cycling through my equipment, I realize that I have a time bomb in my gear. So I chuck it out and it detonates. Kind of a nice touch, though I wonder why Ocelot didn't just dump my shit if he was worried about me escaping. So I run back through all of the shit that I've been through several times now because, yeah, I guess we're padding the game as much as we can with backtracking. In fact, I backtrack so hard that I wind up in a cutscene I just watched maybe 40 minutes ago. Everyone hops into the Discord call and has a big group hug about Meryl being taken prisoner.
This is like a police interrogation.
Then I make it to the staircase from hell, where a camera immediately spots me and I have to loop around and around up these winding stairs packed with soldiers. Kojima does enjoy his realistic buildings. And minigames. Here's another minigame in which Liquid pilots a fucking hind and starts shooting at me. I very poorly rappel down the building after receiving an earful of information about how the minigame works from the Colonel. Then I cheese it across to the other tower before Otacon's fat weeb ass comes up the elevator to ask me how I feel about love. There's a lot of time and place elements in this series that come off as really weird. Again, it's kind of that anime thing of, it doesn't matter what dangerous thing is happening or how dire the situation is, there's always time for a good monologue. I think the most unbelievable part about this conversation is just how deep Snake suddenly is. This is the guy who would hit on the cashier at a Ben & Jerry's while she's handing him his ice cream, and now he's sitting here talking about love being able to bloom anywhere at any time. It just feels like an incredibly forced way to spur on a romance between him and Meryl. I mean, he's known her for all of 2 hours, it's very sudden. Anyways, we head up and grab the Stinger to do battle with Liquid in his chopper.
So, the snake's finally come out of his home!
What?
Are you ready now, my brother?
What? Why are you calling me brother? Who the hell are you?
I'm you!
What?
Ask the father that you killed.
What?
Welcome to Class A realism, starring Snake shooting 200 Stinger missiles into a single Hind chopper. It doesn't bring too much to the table and takes way too long. I was okay with Sniper Wolf taking 7 or so bullets to the face since she stayed relatively within my scope the entire time. This is a helicopter which zips around the building. Plus there's lulls of action where Liquid decides to hide under the building for a bit and we can't just peek over it and shoot at him, so we have to wait. All of that said, the fight is actually pretty easy. Maybe one of the easiest so far. Finally, the guy goes down, and Snake action movie hero one-lines him before taking a codec call with Otacon, who lets me know that the way down to Metal Gear is now open. So I start to head down and...
The guys who stole my stealth prototypes are in there with you!
After taking out the Invisos, it's time to actually kill Sniper Wolf, who starts the battle by casually shooting me in the chest. Otacon wants me to spare her because he's a sweaty weeb of a simp. So I guess that's what I'm attempting to do now. Naturally, the best way to go about that is to start shooting her with a Stinger, which makes absolutely zero sense in any sort of way, even from the perspective of how a Stinger works. This fight's okay. Actually, compared to the Hind fight, it's a work of art. But without that context, it's alright. I figured that my sniper rifle is basically just firing rubber bands at her. So I opt for the Nikita missile launcher instead, which naturally fires water balloons instead. My foe eventually gives up and lays down after my last balloon was filled with Heinz ketchup, which got all over her nice white coat. The aftermath has me listening to Sniper Wolf's last words, much like Psycho Mantis, in which she also describes a sad childhood. It's not as unique or as sad as Mantis's, but it is touching in its own way. I think the saddest bit is when old Hal comes running out and gives her gun before Snake finishes her off.
What am I fighting for? What are you fighting for?
If we make it through this, I'll tell you.
Okay.
Alright, head into the base, insert disc 2, head down an elevator, fight some dudes, Miller time. So Miller here tells us that a story which Naomi told me earlier about her father was completely fabricated, and points towards her being a potential spy. Since we're far enough along now, I can just tell you that Miller's the spy, and that he's trying to sabotage Snake's trust. We'll get more to that when it happens. For now, we continue our boss rush with the return of Vulcan Raven.
Must have been a tight fit for a big boy like you.
Hot. So yeah, Vulcan Raven goes on and on about the spirit of competition, spouting off random Wikipedia facts about Inuit blood and ear-pulling contests for some reason. He's sitting here like, yes, we will fight as warriors, spirit versus spirit. And then he pulls out his minigun and just starts unloading on me. Ah yes, the spirit of competition. I answer his call with my new podcast that I've decided to call C4 and Stinger Missiles. It's a working title. This battle is also quite long. I feel that if Raven did a lot more damage, but also took a lot more damage, it would be a lot more intense. This hulking giant of a man does have an intimidation factor to him, but it wears off 30 seconds into this 5 to 10 minute battle. Either way, down he goes, and he imparts to me the knowledge that Decoy Octopus was indeed the version of Donald Anderson that we met earlier. He also explains that the blood was drained from the real corpse so that he could better copy Anderson. Gross. But that's the only part of the riddle that we receive. So Snake doesn't figure out why Octopus decided to impersonate Anderson because he doesn't continue thinking about it. Might have something to do with watching a man get eaten to death by ravens. They usually go for the eyes first, but it's hard to tell with these space-age graphics. So yeah, from here Master Miller comes flying in to virtually order the arrest of Naomi after declaring her to 100% be a spy. The Colonel struggles with this information as he's obviously imparted some secrets to her, but reluctantly agrees to interrogate her. And now I'm off to the final leg of my boss rush here, straight into Metal Gear's chambers. The thing has no guards, as Snake notes when Otacon calls him. Otacon concludes that they must be ready to launch the war machine and have cleared everyone out. so he's taken it upon himself to hack into the computers to try to help me override the launch despite only having one key. This entire area is just me grabbing stuff while Otacon keeps phoning in to tell me about his elite hacker skills. The notable info which he does impart me with is that since Metal Gear can launch nukes with a railgun, it bypasses a lot of international treaties involving nukes. Additionally, the missiles don't have any sort of propulsion system, meaning that military radar systems won't be able to pick up the nukes that are launched, which sounds horrifying on a number of levels. When I make it to the top, Ocelot and Liquid are just chatting it up. They're having a grand old time discussing their entire plans back and forth with each other, saying everything out in the open. You know, standard villain shit. They go on and on about how they're going to nuke China to expose America's new weapon, how they're going to ally themselves with Russia and use their soldiers to reinforce their own, and how they're going to take over the world because that's what all villains want. But most importantly, that Liquid wants to revive Big Boss's former base of operations, Outer Heaven. This was the place that Solid Snake destroyed in the first Metal Gear game and then destroyed again at its soon-to-be new location in the second one. So now I'm hit with the information that my one card key is actually 3 keys in one that change shape to suit whatever temperature it's being exposed to. Otacon basically tells me that they can only be used one time, and that they'll deactivate the nukes if they're active, and vice versa. That last bit is the especially important part, as
Who's that? Damn! The key fell in the drainage ditch.
oh come on, man. So I go all the way back down and try to find this thing with my thermal goggles. Then I head back up and insert it into the first laptop. The worst part about this is the guards which rush in to try to take me out. I know, they should be no issue, and while they're not horrendous to deal with, they do take a solid chunk of my health bar. Let's not mince words here. I suck at this game. I've died a lot. My only saving grace a lot of the time is the fact that I can shovel rations into my body at an alarming rate. But in this case, I just got out of a very cold environment, so my rations are now fucking frozen, meaning that I can't eat them. While it does add some intensity to the combat until they thaw, me being bad at general combat situations means that I'm now even more crippled here, which kinda sucks. Anyways, as you might have been able to guess just from the sheer convenience, or maybe just because you've played this game before, but this entire card key conversation was a gigantic setup by Liquid. Octopus telling me about the keys while impersonating Anderson, Liquid discussing his plans in the open, and impersonating Miller, who's the one who's been trying to get me to suspect someone else is the spy. All of it was orchestrated to get me to actually activate Metal Gear. They never got the codes out of Anderson before killing him. Metal Gear was never active, it was all a bluff. Honestly, the first time that I played this thing, this entire turnabout blew my mind. Reliving it isn't as mind-blowing, but the amount of layers allows for the player to suspect that something is fucky, but never really figure it out fully until the last piece falls into place. I still enjoy this plot twist. It's one of those things where the answer feels like it's on the tip of your tongue up until the final moments. What's absolutely ridiculous about this plot twist is the lead-up to it. The key changes with temperature. We've been to a cold place, we've been to a hot place. Guess what we need to do? Backtrack. Backtrack to the laptops, backtrack to the cold place, backtrack to the laptops, backtrack to the hot place, backtrack to the laptops. That includes these long-ass elevator sequences. The only solace that I can take in this backtracking is that more information is gleaned by Miller when he explains both Decoy Octopus and Baker died from a strain of government-created virus known as Fox Die. He explains that the only way that these two could have been exposed to it was from the nanomachines that were injected into my bloodstream by Naomi Hunter before the mission started. The reason that Liquid would go out of his way to tell you this was that so you could look for a vaccine in case this disease has spread from you to him. On my final return trip, Naomi contacts me to tell me that part of what she was being accused of is true.
Rhodesia was owned by England until 1965, and there were lots of Indian laborers around.
What she explains to me is that Frank Yeager, aka Gray Fox, and Snake's former friend/enemy was more or less her big brother in a lot of regards. She bought her identity as Naomi Hunter and began getting into gene experimentation. And, alright, this is fucking boring. The point is that Snake killed or nearly killed the two people most important to her in her life, and she decided to enact revenge on him by attempting to kill him. So this virus that she injected him with targets specific DNA structures, meaning that it's programmed to kill not only the people it did kill, but Solid Snake as well. It's safe to say that Liquid would be included in that. Before Naomi gets spirited away though, she tells Snake that it wasn't her decision to use the virus, implying that the US might have been the one to issue that order.
Snake,
Anyways, I shoved the red-hot meat stick into the computer slot to make the death robot stop. But the death robot starts.
What?
Yeah, here it is. Liquid unveils his clever disguise of not changing his accent and wearing sunglasses at night.
You didn't think you made it this far by yourself, did you?
What? Liquid. How the...
That's actually an interesting point to make. There are several elements here at play which share a balance between a video game decision and a logistics decision. With the way that everything was set up, it very much seemed like the enemy was constantly working against you. Like, why would you, the player, ever suspect that Liquid was using you? He sent his people after you at every turn, he tried to kill you with a chopper, Ocelot shot the keycard out of your hand. There's no reason to think, yep, he's using me. But at the same time, all of these actions pad the game with content. Boss fights, backtracking, codec calls, all of them used to make the game just a little longer to stretch that content. I disagree with this. From a logistics view, why risk Snake dying before he can figure out how to activate Metal Gear for you? Why shoot his keycard, potentially losing it or damaging it? What's the point of arming a time bomb on his gear if you really want him alive? Ah, fuck. Frank, dude.
Huh? What?
Yeah, Metal Gear was just activated. It's not ready yet. Do you have the keycard?
Yeah, it's right here.
Alright, I'll insert it into the laptop, then run down into the freezer, and then run back and insert it, and then run back to the hot place, and then From a gameplay point of view, okay, so you want to make the game longer, and you don't have the time or resources to design new areas. What do? You reuse the areas, simple. Fine if you must, but is there not a better way? Why not give Snake a free pass into this area, let him activate Metal Gear, and then capture him? And then he has to fight his way back to it through your bosses to get to it. Yes, you could argue that with Metal Gear activated they could just launch it and that's game over. But just add something like some kind of spin-up time, some kind of checks that the machine has to go through for hours. Have Ocelot torture Snake for sheer enjoyment rather than information. The possibilities are limitless and interchangeable with this kind of plot and this kind of universe. The twist doesn't have to happen at the end, and utilizing it towards the beginning only opens you to coming up with another twist that knocks the players off their feet. Far be it from me to rectify what a lot of people, including myself at one point in time, felt to be a masterpiece. But I do think that all of this could have been handled more efficiently. Regardless, Liquid reveals that he's already been infected with Fox Dye. But now that they have Metal Gear fully operational, he can demand that the Pentagon release the vaccine in addition to his other demands. So now let's get on with the show. Liquid locks you into this room, which Otacon is able to hack you out of. Then Liquid runs by you with his shirt off, and showcases his latest technology, bulletproof skin.
Nanomachine, son!
From here, we get the full rundown for the slowpokes at home.
Did you like my sunglasses?
What?
The more interesting bit is Liquid's confirmation that the Pentagon was just using Snake as a vector to spread Fox Dye to every terrorist here, eventually killing them from the virus and allowing the government to recover Metal Gear. That said, seeing how every other person infected almost immediately died, the question arises. Why haven't you or Liquid died yet? Well, apparently Naomi had a change of heart and altered something about the virus right before the mission went live. Liquid has no idea what was altered, but I'd reckon the fact that we're both still standing probably has something to do with it. Then Liquid explains the whole cloning program which created us, and how Solid Snake got the dominant genes and how Liquid got the recessive genes from Big Boss. This is completely untrue, but isn't revealed until the end of the game, so pretend I didn't say that shit yet. Anyways, Liquid's fucking pissed. Dude has daddy issues out the ass, and goes on to tell you that you killed Big Boss before he could, and he's mad about that since Big Boss used to slap him around and call him a little inferior baby. Now Liquid wants to surpass him by doing what Big Boss did, but better. And then he says he's proud to be Big Boss's son. Interesting. So Big L jumps into the Gundam to try to kill his brother, which leads us into this boss fight. The fight can be tough if you don't understand basic patterns like I do. The thing that you need to remember is chaff grenade, stinger, repeat. At the end of it, Metal Gear springs back to life and tries to crush Snake before Gray Fox comes flipping in to stop it from doing so. The guy's taking a break from being a lunatic and remembers that he was the one who killed Naomi's parents back when he found her and took her in as her pseudo-big brother. Meanwhile, Liquid's slowly trying to figure out where we are during this monologue.
There you are!
So Fox decides he's going to sacrifice himself to try to stop Metal Gear, which gets him pinned against the wall before he shoots at it with some kind of arm cannon looking thing. Apparently this Metroid-ass gun is more powerful than the 10 Stinger missiles that I sent at this robot before, as it actually disables a portion of it. Or maybe it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Either way, you are now prompted to shoot the Stinger at the exposed bit of Metal Gear Rex, but doing so will kill Gray Fox as Liquid tells you. Snake can't bring himself to shoot. There's nothing that you can do here as the player. But realistically, that guy is fucking toast regardless. Eventually, Liquid shoves Fox to the ground and stomps him to death, which is absolutely brutal. This is one of those anime things where the player instantly feels mad at the villain for doing something heinous, and it's pretty effective. Though then Metal Gear Rex roars like a fucking dinosaur, so the moment's kind of lost for me personally. So now we've got round 2, which is more of the same, though hitting Liquid is harder than hitting the top right of Rex. This battle feels a lot better than Vulcan Raven's because each missile actually does a sizable amount of damage to Metal Gear, and the stakes feel a lot higher. Especially if you die and you realize that you have to do both parts of the fight over again. When I finally take the behemoth down, I get knocked out for a bit as Liquid approaches to speak to me. His priority doesn't seem to be to kill me outright. It feels as though he wants to actually win a fight. This is only furthered by his motivations that he expands on, in which he tells you that he wants to create a world where warriors were honored the way they used to be, explaining how good soldiers used to be sought after and revered among society, and how they're little more than tools that are looked at with disgust now.
Why did you come here? Well, I'll tell you then. You enjoy all the killing. That's why.
What?
Liquid then explains the exact process which created us, in which the government took Big Boss's genes while he was in a coma and tried to create the perfect killing machines. Originally, there were 8 fetuses, but 6 were aborted to encourage the remaining 2 to grow the strongest. He then continues on to explain that during something referred to as the Human Genome Project, over 60 different genes which scientists referred to as soldier genes were identified and isolated, which contained traits like strategic thinking and the killer instinct. Those genes were then transplanted into the latest batch of soldiers, which are the genome soldiers I've made reference to in this video. All of this information is the basis which molds Metal Gear Solid sequels. And while it isn't nearly as important or expanded on in this game, it does form the building blocks for later entries. This is an absolute torrent of information, even using the game's logic to explain the real-world phenomenon of the Gulf War syndrome, which over a third of US soldiers returned with after serving in the Gulf War. Even today, no one has been able to accurately pin down with 100% certainty why these soldiers returned from the Gulf War with these ailments, and the game uses its made-up genome project to explain that these soldiers were all part of the experiment, even going on to state that the defects in Gulf War babies were directly tied to it as well.
So the genome soldiers mean that the experiments were a success?
Success? Don't be a fool! They're a complete failure!
What?
The informative flood doesn't stop there though, as Liquid goes on to explain that biology in nature favors asymmetrical patterns on a genetic level. It's explained that every species which has gone extinct has shared some kind of symmetry in their genes. Although I couldn't find anything that directly relates to this theory in the real world, it holds water when you think about it from a practical perspective. If every human had symmetrical genes to a degree that they were identical on a genetic level, it would only take one particularly nasty virus to wipe out most or all of the population. So since Snake, Liquid, and the genome soldiers all share symmetry in their genes, this means a single virus could destroy them if one were developed to target them that way. So here's the funny part. The game introduces yet another theory, but this one states that people are genetically programmed to help their relatives survive to ensure that their family doesn't die out. Liquid states that this is the very reason why he feels such a strong and burning desire to help his fellow genome soldiers survive. And then he fucking fights Snake to the death, the almost exact carbon copy of himself. But before that, Liquid tells me that now that Metal Gear is destroyed, the Pentagon is moving in on them. Asking the colonel about this reveals that indeed the Secretary of Defense has decided to bomb the place with B-2 bombers carrying surface-piercing nuclear bombs to destroy all evidence of everything. The colonel here also tells me that the reason that he's been so hesitant with all of this sensitive information around Snake was because the government intentionally transferred his niece Meryl to the base before the incident as a way to manipulate him into cooperating. As his final act, he tells you that he's going to order the team to cancel the bombing run to confuse the chain of command.
What are you doing?
Roy Campbell has been relieved of duty. This is the Secretary of Defense, Jim Houseman.
Yeah, this guy is a complete bastard. He's had the colonel arrested for high treason, and is now ordering this strike without the president's knowledge. To explain the story to the media, he's going to simply state that the terrorists have detonated a nuclear device.
He was my friend.
The only thing that will change the secretary's mind at this stage is the optical disc which has all of the Metal Gear test data on it, which I don't have anymore.
You two are an embarrassment from the 1970s.
So yeah, to take things up a notch at this already maxed out point of danger, Liquid plants another nuclear device on top of the broken down nuclear device launcher in this hidden nuclear device testing facility. Except this one has a 3-minute limit on it. Of course, Liquid talks away 30 seconds of it by asking me if I would like to fuck Meryl instead of fight him, which is more than a little weird. But then the fight starts. Just two shirtless dudes wrestling it out. It's not a very technical fight, but it does get stressful when I slip and slide off the death robot. So yeah, down he goes. I don't see Snake disarm the nuke, so I imagine Meryl woke up and just ate it or something, because it's not up there anymore.
Meryl!
After this touching reunion, Otacon phones in to let me know that there's a garage nearby with a vehicle to amscray out of there before the bombs fall. He decides that he's going to stay behind to ensure that we can escape.
Meryl.
Snake.
Meryl.
Did Kojima run out of dialogue? I mean, I've kind of been memeing with this stuff, but a lot of dialogue revolving around these two is just them saying each other's names over and over. I get that it's supposed to be a, that's all that needs to be said moment, but Jesus, it sounds strange.
Looking good, Snake.
Not a good sign when she compliments your looks after putting your clothes back on. So yeah, we run to the garage and try to find a vehicle to escape within 10 minutes.
Damn, no keys. All right, keys.
This bitch sounds like Ash Ketchum. Yeah, this game is a hilarious nightmare of B-movie action sequences at the end of it. You hop in the gunner seat of this warthog and have to blast every little soldier you see before Meryl will bypass these plywood barriers. Then Liquid comes chasing after you in his own car after surviving the fall that he claimed would kill you. Then again, the dude survived a fucking helicopter explosion and crash with no injuries whatsoever. So cool, I guess. What's a dude with no turret or gunner gonna do to try to attack you while you shoot at him with a full-auto machine gun? Ram you and shoot back with a FAMAS, of course. Finally, you make it out into daylight and promptly crash.
Liquid's dead. Uh-oh.
Snake! Snake!
Yep, that's what he finally dies from. I'm doing my best to not gush about the absolutely insane shit that happens with Liquid's legacy in other games, but it's hard, because it all just came flooding back to me after seeing him die here. But for this video's purposes, that is the end of Liquid. It is worth noting that if you gave into Ocelot's torture earlier, Meryl dies and Snake mourns over her body atop Metal Gear after defeating his brother. I actually like that scene a lot more because it's super sad and touching in the way that Otacon comforts you and grows as a character. It's non-canon, but it's a cool inclusion in the game that makes the torture stuff have that much more of an impact. Before we move on to the final act here, I have to mention something that actually goes all the way back to the main menu of the game. In the starting menu is an option simply called Briefing, in which tons and tons of information which is all covered over the course of the game is revealed immediately. It's my thought that this was probably going to be originally the introduction to the game, as many of these lines are repeated in the original 3-minute introduction. However, the total combined briefing files are a staggering 22 minutes long. It covers stuff like what exactly genome soldiers are, how the genes are isolated, how Liquid looks exactly like Solid Snake.
Here's a photo of him. I have a twin?
How Meryl was kidnapped by terrorists and is the reason why the Colonel is participating in this mission even though he's retired. But most interestingly, how the Foxhound unit came to be the way that it is now. You see, the top-ranking members which I've faced throughout the game were mostly or all part of Big Boss's elite private guard. When Big Boss was defeated, the US military simply bought out their contracts and reintegrated them into Foxhound. When undergoing their training and tests, all of them passed psychological exams with flying colors, and were never suspected of having anything more than patriotism for their new outfit. What really went down was that they felt that familial connection via the genetic altercations which they underwent as a unit, and they all viewed this rebellion as a form of revolution with no dissent.
Video game players, huh?
I do enjoy this part of the briefing files, but I have to say that altogether they pretty much ruin a lot of the game's plot which is developed over the course of the game. I'm glad that they made them optional, but I almost would have rather have seen them unlocked as part of a completion of the game instead of right from the start. So to wrap this all up, the bombs never fall. I mean, I imagine that even if these guys escaped the facility and nukes went off on a nuclear facility, they'd have to be halfway through Canada to even start to be safe. But yeah, the Colonel managed to contact the President and have the Secretary of Defense arrested. Apparently the guy was acting on his own in a kind of power trip behind the President's back.
Washington isn't stupid enough to use nukes to cover up a few secrets.
I wonder about that.
Naomi comes in to explain to Snake what it was that was altered about the Foxdie virus. Yeah, she doesn't actually explain anything at all. Snake's like, alright, so when do I die? And she's like, that's up to you. And he's like, okay, that's great, but seriously, when do I die? Because, you know, kind of important. And she's like, just live, that's all I can say to you. What the fuck are you talking about, lady? This was probably a way for the game to acknowledge the idea that Snake has the virus and could die at any time without just outright saying 1 year or something like that. As much credit as I want to give Kojima about articulating his story throughout several games, I don't imagine he knew exactly what he wanted to do with Snake at this stage. So the game concludes with Snake and Meryl having on paper officially died in this incident when their truck fell into the ocean, now free from being used by the government. What they really do instead is snowmobile off into the sunrise.
Maybe it's time I live for someone else.
Someone else?
Yeah. Someone like you.
Still not feeling the emotional bond, but it sure is being ramrodded in here, so let's roll with it. Again, if you let Meryl die, you ride off with Otacon instead, and I really like this ending a lot more. It just feels more organic than the idea that Snake is ready to give up everything that he knows to be with a woman that he just met in the same day.
My real name is David, Otacon.
I'm Hal, Dave.
Oh, that's right. Hal. Hal and Dave. That's a good one. Maybe we should take a trip to Jupiter.
But that's it for the story. The game concludes by presenting some facts about how many nuclear bombs there are in the world, how much power they collectively have, and the implication of how much destruction they could bring upon humanity. And finally, after the credits roll, you get to hear Ocelot reveal his true role as a spy for America, explaining that he recovered all of the data from the Metal Gear tests, and how Foxdie should be kicking in at any time.
Yes. Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. President.
What? Metal Gear Solid will probably always hold a place in my heart. There's really not a way to put into words how it feels to play through these games for the first time, to witness the stories that they have to tell. I know I kinda just did that, sort of, with this video, but my point is that there's something really unique about these games, which dare to put the story above the gameplay a lot of the time. I could go on and on about all of these little story elements which all tie together in a big way throughout the franchise, but I set out to answer one question here. Was Metal Gear Solid as good as I remember? Yes and no. Mechanically, a lot of the gameplay elements are building blocks for later entries in different series, making a huge splash in the gaming industry at the time. But they weren't quite fleshed out in the first game. There are cool ideas, yes. but many of them lack the execution needed to retain their fun factor the same way that they were in 1998. A lot of the game is built off of backtracking, and I've always had a huge amount of chagrin for games which make you play the same part of it over and over again with no discernible difference in gameplay. But when it comes down to the plot, I think you might be able to tell just how much fun I've had with it. Yes, there are definitely some cheesy, over-the-top, and edgy moments. There are moments that make you go, what the fuck was that? But a lot of the ideas are just so cool to think about, and the way that they tie into the real world makes you think about how a lot of different government structures work even today. And the first game is essential in explaining a lot of what the rest of the series ties in later. If you've never experienced these games for yourself, and have any sort of interest in them after watching this video, I highly recommend checking them out for yourself. Like I said before, now might be a better time than ever to delve into them with GOG putting up 1 and 2 for sale. And I can assure you that 2 only ramps up the story ideas here to new heights. It's a shame that we might never see another proper entry into the saga. But the way that it did end with 4, and then went back to explain more of what happened in the past with 5, I'd say that the series did pretty well for itself. Thanks for watching. I had a blast reliving a lot of the ideas Kojima brought to the table with this series, and the first game in particular. Thanks again to GOG for helping me with that experience, and feel free to grab the game for yourself on their site. Anyways, I have t-shirts for sale, you know? A Vivek one, a Doom/Oblivion one, ones that aren't Elder Scrolls related. Please indulge yourself in their earthly comfort if you desire a shirt that kicks ass. I also have a Twitch where I occasionally stream myself dying over and over. I have a Twitter where I post my new videos as soon as they drop. I have a Discord where people chat about whatever the hell they might be thinking in a stream of consciousness that can only be described as definitely a Discord server. And I have a Patreon. And that's it. Have a good one.
I'm not green.
Oh, yes, you are.